Ted Maestas, Tryba Architects. Been working 29 years in the industry. Worked for Gensler, Burkett's, Tryba, lots of interiors.
My name is Carmen Mazzant. I'm with DLR Group. About 18 years in the industry. I lead the electrical engineering group in the Denver studio.
Hey everybody, I'm Lisa Bartlett. I'm at Davis Partnership Architects and I head up our lighting studio. First half of my career, we'll just leave it at 20 plus years, was in architecture and interior design, and I'm licensed in both, but I pivoted about halfway through my career to practice lighting design because I deeply, deeply believe in the power of lighting to shape space, perception, and wellness.
I'm Jack English with Illumination Systems. I'm a principal there. I've been in the industry 39 years. Illumination Systems 29 years. And as to what I do, I'm the reason we're having a meeting tonight. So.
My name's Steve Foote. I've been an electrician 30 years, and I'm one of the principals of Greiner Electric, and I'm listed as Vice President of Operations, so I handle all of the electrical work outside of the offices.
Thanks very much, everybody. So I want to go through real quickly how we're going to do this event, right? So it is 6:13 now. We're going to spend about the next 50 minutes or so having questions. All of those questions are predetermined here. I'm going to read them. All the panelists have a chance to answer. Their answers are going to be no more than 90 seconds, right? And if they go over 90 seconds, I'm going to cut them off. But at the end, if you guys write down your questions, we're gonna have another 20 minutes at the end of that, so you can, ask follow-up questions there. I've got several topics in 4 different categories. First category is general. Second category is progress, pricing, and then the future. And then hopefully we get everybody out of here at 7:30 sharp. That's what I'm aiming for. So that is 60 common misconception about what you do.
I'm happy to speak to that.
You can answer at will.
As it relates to lighting design is that we inflate pricing on jobs, or that it is only something that belongs in projects that are high-end or have a really large budget. Our belief is that lighting that is well-designed, that is aligned with the architectural and interior features of a space and the exterior features enhances a design at any budget level.
I'd say the most common, in this forum, the most common misconception is the electrical engineer doesn't care about the lighting. That they just want it to be handled by somebody else or designed by someone else. But, in our practice, it's probably the most interesting thing that we get to do on any given project. Sizing service equipment, it's fun, but it's only so fun, right? It doesn't change on every project. So, for us, it's really something that if you ask around the group and you say, what do you want, what do you care about in the next project? It's always that. That's the first answer, not the last answer.
Common misconception is architects don't do interiors. I go around our office every day explaining to people it's always design. It doesn't matter if you're architect, interiors, it's all design. So if you're passionate about it, lighting plays a big part, but it's all design all the time.
Is that your tagline?
Not my first.
From a contractor standpoint, one of the biggest misconceptions that I think a lot of people have is that the contractors have a huge influence over the factories on delivering fixtures and that we can make miracles happen. I have a lot of good friends that are general contractors, and I've likened buying fixtures to buying a car. If I was to tell Jeff, I'm going to give you this much money to buy this car, I want it here in this color by this day, he's got X amount of opportunity to get it done. And that's where we try to partner with our relationships here, because when problems happen, they need to be fixed. But most people think the electrical contractor has this big stick and these factories are going to just jump over hoops for us, and it doesn't happen that way.
Go ahead.
Who has the big stick?
We will get to that.
I think, as a distributor, I think the misconception of us is we're an unnecessary evil and all we do is add price to the price, which It isn't true at all. We try to come up with all kinds of services for the contractors. We store fixtures for them. We do warranty work. We double check submittals. We do a lot of things. We've got like 85 people in our branch to service the contractors. And I think a lot of people overlook that and they think that we're just really not needed.
But are you the bank?
And we're the bank.
I would just kind of tag on what Darwin was saying. We assign value to things, and each of us in the chain, I feel like, is important. But it's very easy for all of us, and if we're talking about how we make this a better future for our industry, is to try to perceive the value that everyone brings to the process. Darwin is a necessary part of the process, as is Illumination Systems, the contractor, the design community. So I would think the biggest misperception is that somehow we create barriers, that we're bringing an obstinance to the process, and that's actually not the case. So,
Cool. So we're going to go into, do I need a mic? No. Okay. These are general questions, so they're going to be kind of all over the place. The first one, to Zach Hard, is do you use social media, and how, if anything, has it helped you?
We do use social media, mostly use it more for ordering online, and it wouldn't really be involving lighting at all. It's mostly just commodities and things like that.
For promotion purposes only.
Yeah, we're probably 1,300 people in 26 offices. We've got brand managers and social media experts and channels and content managers and all of that. It's for promotion. It's to demonstrate our projects.
We do, at a firm level, we're active across all social media channels, and then I personally do I'm very active on LinkedIn, so if you haven't found me, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm connected with at least half the people in this room. But I think there's so much power in what we're sharing visually and how we're linking across all of those social media channels, that we have pretty big voices and we have big footprint and big influence. I know our team, and just want to give a shout out because we've got a lot of folks here tonight, that we do a lot of fun things, and it's actually just really enjoyable to be able to show those off and let our team be visible too.
I brought my own microphone. Yeah, gave me a heads up. Thank you, Jeff. We use it primarily for to disseminate information to the community. Like most people in here, we're not in the public domain typically, and particularly in our case, so it's strictly informational.
We use it on a company level, much to what most everybody here says. I would say on a personal level, I avoid it like the plague. There is just no reason I need to be doing that. I have enough things going on that if anybody wants to know me, Jack knows me well, Jeff knows me well, they can get all of my wife and she'll tell them everything. On a company level, yes, we do it to keep your name out there, to keep people aware of what's going on and so forth. But I can tell you personally, day-to-day business, it's very limited for me.
One thing to add on, our company intranet is this web-based portal that looks like social media. So we have our public-facing side of things, but internally, we do use it to share projects internally. People comment on it, like it, ask questions, collaborate in real time, and it's a great way to connect offices around the country and the world.
You guys have offices all over the world, right?
We've got 26 in the U.S. And a presence in Asia and Africa.
Next question. What impacts have the U.S. tariffs made on your U.S.-based projects?
I'll start. I feel like I don't have a control over it as a designer, but sure feels like you're getting held hostage sometimes by tariffs. It's not an integral part of what I do for my business, so it just feels like this thing that's out there that gets thrown around that says there's this tariff that's coming, we got to get this submittals pushed through, let's get it done, let's beat this deadline, and there's another deadline, and there's these price hikes, and it kind of, it feels scary because we care a lot about the designs that we're working on, and and people say, well, if we don't get this done in time, we're gonna have to look at ways to save money. And the owner just ends up with an inferior building at the end of the day, and we have little control over it. So, but I don't blame anybody else up here.
It's affected us to the point, and it's a reality, and it's something that we've been told by every manufacturer. Last quarter of last year, there were tariffs that were involved. I think we placed $6 million worth of orders to avoid tariff increases the last quarter of last year. And we're told that it could happen again in the first quarter of this year. It's a reality, and there's nothing we can do about it. And it's just, we just have to react to whatever happens with it.
I would say that the ownership group of these buildings has been fairly receptive. They know that it hasn't been caused by anybody on the project, and it's not because anybody on the project hasn't done something. There simply isn't anything you can do. So as long as you advise them of what the cost impacts are going to look at and when they're going to happen and so forth, they've been fairly receptive to it. I don't think they're any happier about it, but there isn't anything we can collectively do about that. I will say, though, kind of chiming on what Darwin said, we have seen a lot of answers get done in a whole bunch of time here quickly, which from a contractor side has been a little bit nicer because now we have a little more time to get the things.
I think those are really interesting perspectives. We had some unusual occurrences fourth quarter of last year when manufacturers had already done one round of tariff increases in October and were forecasting pricing for tariff increases that were going to happen in first quarter of this year. And we saw price inflation that was about 200%. And it really knocked some of our projects way out of whack budget-wise. So one of the things that we did, and it speaks to the process that we've developed, which is to go back and look at unit pricing and see how we can make sure that everything is really aligned with where it needs to be. And luckily we were able to work with our teams, some of those folks are here in this room, you know who you are, to get those projects right-sized. But I think it underscores a huge ambiguity for our clients that we are in the midst of a market cycle where we may be reaching kind of the peak that some of our private clients are willing to afford construction prices. And I think that if this continues on, we'll see a change across the construction market with what our clients are willing to afford, because lighting is only one of many components in the building that is affected by tariffs. So far, longest answer of the night. Thank you. You almost beat me up.
So the limited time I have, the sliver of space. I'm waiting for your hand to go up. The tariffs are obviously, it's a political reality, and the inevitability was that we would have one December 31st. The challenge is it's complex from a manufacturer standpoint, because cleanly it's 10% here, and then it's going to be 15% March 1st. Don't know. We haven't heard anything any differently from that. But the second tariff will address and be probably comprehensive to and including all 15% of the increase. The initial tariff was very small. It involved some particular components. So we saw some adjustments where we came out and said 10%, and as time went by and we understood it better, some of that was 6. I can't have any idea of what progress is being made towards the tariffs at this point, but it's going to be a full 15%, from our manufacturer's standpoint the next time. So,
is that a certainty, or is it still
it's applying to 15% is applying to almost I can speak to Eaton, almost 100% of their manufactured products, where we had a component increase the last time. So it will be the tariff will be 15%, but then, like you said, there is some adjustments that you have to make.
Nice, that was also 87 seconds.
I saw your hand.
Very nice. Okay, last general question. Do you use 3D drawings in your practice, and what form?
No.
Absolutely. It is the biggest game changer for us as a contractor out there now. 3D is going to be the way these jobs will be built in the future. I promise it.
speaking from the architectural firm, multidisciplinary design firm, if I said no, there would be all hell to pay. So the answer is hell yes. Everything, all day, every day, everywhere.
Yeah, we use 3D, and more we've got virtual reality goggles in each one of our offices so that we can do kind of VR collaboration between disciplines, which is kind of the next wave of taking this highly detailed building model and leveraging it all the different ways we can to be better at our jobs.
Yes, every day, everything. The more Revit models that are out there for light fixtures, furniture, all those things, I'm always asking lighting reps, is it in Revit? Not yet. Wrong answer.
How much time do I have?
90 seconds.
No.
Okay, we're switching to a topic that I've labeled progress here. The industry is moving faster with less design and coordination time. What tools do you implement to coordinate design or deal with these faster design phases? So tools do you use to deal with faster design phases?
So as I mentioned, we've got kind of virtual reality coordination, and so DLR Group's integrated design practice. We've got architects, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, specialty, anybody and everybody works with us. So we have dedicated project spaces in our offices where we can have the 7 people that all need to know about this room, in the same room, talking about it all at the same time. And people want to do the right thing. People want a good project at the end of the day. So just remove the barriers. It's the free thing that everybody can do. The virtual reality stuff is cool. Don't get me wrong, but that's not the answer that everybody can implement. I think put the people in the room is.
I would supplement that too, is one of the biggest successes we've had is you get the decision makers there that are making the decisions together so it doesn't end up taking a month to get an answer. Getting everybody together in a room, who's making the decision, who is able to make the decision. It seems like with the speed of the design and the construction schedules getting smaller, it's tougher to do and time just gets ran out.
So with that, it's also the general contractor. We can design quicker, but with all of this conversation, the client wants to know how much is that. So there's the delay, I think.
I'm going to echo what each of you just said, and also the fact that through the process of design, the more that we can all be in the same room and utilizing charrettes and really bringing every perspective into play in the room makes a huge difference. I know for us, and we are also multidisciplinary, and we have those disciplines under one roof, that the communication of just being able to walk to someone's desk, as old-fashioned as that is, really removes a huge amount of barriers. And so that's one of the ways that we're very successful. It sounds old-fashioned, but that goes a really long way, to have face-to-face communication. We're also, and I think many of us in this room probably feel the pinch and the burden of having to move through things so very quickly. Who feels that way? Like, oh my God, we're at supersonic speed all the time. It's kind of exhausting, right? Like, I think the more that we have a firm and a work environment that supports us in our highest function, flexible work practices and that kind of thing, that's very helpful. And then the earlier that we have contractors on board to be able to advise on pricing and be in the room and understand design intent, the more successful we can be at collapsing timeframes on projects.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to read this next one slowly. What processes have you implemented to make submittal approval go smoother and quicker? Okay, so submittal process can be multifaceted, right, and all the phases of it, but I'll repeat the question. What processes have you implemented to make the submittal approval go more smoothly and quickly?
I think with our practice, a lot of it is contractors like Saunders saying you have 24 hours or a week or 7 days or whatever it is. We have a project in Chicago where the general contractor copies me but sends it to the electrical engineer or sends it to whoever. which in this market I wasn't familiar with, but it does speed it up. So it's going to the person that needs to review it as opposed to through me and waiting in my inbox. So once I was familiar with it, I don't have a problem with it.
On a few projects, we've kind of had these pre-submittal gatherings where you get, you know, all the stakeholders in the room and kind of work through it. It can be, depends on the construction site. And that can help. I think one of the things that makes the process go faster is when people are honest and clear about what the actual deadlines are. Like I said before, everybody wants to do the right thing, but when everybody's just working against a ticking clock and it feels like, I don't know why there's 50 fixtures in this submittal, but only 2 of them really matter today. I can get you those 2 today. Let's talk about those 2 right now. And the strip lights bother me in a month about it, you know. But if we can have partners that are willing to make because the administrative side is all electronic. I'm not getting 10 hard copies on my desk anymore. So break the submittal up into 6 packages that are tied to the actual delivery schedule. And we can stack our review that way versus just plowing through the whole thing. I think those are the things where we need to think a little bit differently about our process.
So segmentation and prioritization.
Yeah, parallel processing.
I think the collaboration is the key on our end, and we work a lot with I see a lot of the contractors in here that we collaborate with, and you know, getting the cooperation to sit down in a room and go through the submittals and try to both of our abilities and intent to interpret what is actually needed, and that can be a challenge in itself, but that typically speeds up the process. And you know, I don't want to speak for the contractors, but we seem to have better jobs when we have that type of collaboration.
It's definitely a collaboration piece, but I guess I'd have a question for Jack and Darwin. When you get a fragmented lighting package, I know it impacts you guys, it impacts the price points that you price this stuff on. How are we able to work around that together? Because I've been told I can't release it, not necessarily from Jack, but I can't release it until I have the whole thing. Or we get held hostage for one fixture that isn't part of a specific package. So it gets to be very frustrating for us. The other big thing that we really have to know is the lighting control. Lighting control has become such a big player that we need to know lighting control information as fast, if not faster, than the fixtures. Because I can have fixtures that are ready to go, but if I don't know how it's going to be controlled or the system, I can't tell them how to release it. So it might be approved, but it doesn't mean it's on its way until the other gets figured. And lighting control, it's really ramped itself up over the last 5-10 years, but you know, 10 years ago it was kind of an afterthought. You're going to do something? Well, we'll figure it out. Now you have to build it into the fixture and the components, and if you make a mistake, you got a disaster.
Steve, I have a couple of comments in response to that. I would categorize that streamlined process in terms of, first of all, practices that we do. One of the ones that we like, especially with huge submittals, is to use a Bluebeam studio session for multiple party review. So for instance, if you were the electrical engineer on one of our projects, you could be reviewing, we could be reviewing, and we could see each other's comments simultaneously. Sometimes that clock, if you need a week for a big submittal, it just takes so long. So simultaneous review is really helpful. One of the big requests that we have is that we oftentimes get rubber stamped submittals where it is very obvious that the GC, the EC, and the engineer haven't really reviewed. And so I feel like our team does a very thorough job, but sometimes it just pisses us off that really the lighting designer is the one who's catching every one of these things. We're catching wrong voltage on one of the engineer's fixtures. That happens on almost every submittal. Sorry to the electrical engineers in this room, we haven't worked it. It's not Darwin. One of the things that we would prefer not to happen is don't replicate fixtures. So we received a recent submittal package where it was common spaces and then it was units, and the end fixture types were replicated. That's a waste of everyone's time. Similarly, we review each fixture type individually, so we approve or reject them individually. It's not one whole package, and so to your point, we never treat a submittal as all as one, and we would completely back you up on that, release the fixtures that are approved and only resubmit and hold on fixtures that have been rejected.
Ooh, 89 seconds.
Yes.
I think the biggest frustration in the last 5 years with LED lights is we get the submittal, we accept it, we review it, it's back. He hasn't ordered it yet. What's the delay? Oh, there's another submittal, there's the shop drawing. The clock doesn't start until the shop drawing's done. Well, yeah, it's an LED wall washer that's 23 feet 8 inches. Someone has to review that and approve it, or it doesn't start. There's no production. So,
Can everybody hear Ted okay?
okay. So that's the frustration is, it's really a 2 submittal process.
So like standard and custom, is that kind of, or pseudo custom?
No, it's here's the cut sheet, we approve it, we send it back, everyone's pissed off. Why? The shop drawing wasn't done. Who's gonna tell us there's a shop drawing? We're waiting. We can do it, but we just don't know what's showing up.
That's a very valid point. And a lot of times, I know nowadays, we ask, is there a supplemental shop drawing coming as part of this fixture, or is this being released off of this? Because we'll issue hold for release POs with the distributor and the reps, just to get that process started. Because trust me, it is frustrating on our end too, is you think something's coming, and then here comes this other thing. It's like you gotta restart the clock again. And it's usually not as quick as the submittal. And then if you have to make a change, it restarts again. And if something's not right, it restarts again. And the little trick of make corrections noted and release it seems to be gone. Now it's revise and resubmit. Well, not everything has to be a revise and resubmit. Make this change. You're a professional, you can do it. We don't have to continually do this timestamp delay process.
Another slight mystery is there a rough-in housing that can get shipped to the job site early so they can install it, the drywall guy can finish it, the guts come in later, and everyone's happy, instead of you have to wait 12 weeks for a recessed can light.
You know, and I'll comment on this. There, and Steve is, you know, these are valid points. However, we make stuff for jobs. If you go and buy electrical components, most of the stuff that you buy, probably 90% of it is readily available. It's on a shelf, and that's not the case with lighting manufacturers as a whole. We call them MTOs. They're made to order, and we are in a global supply chain. And I'll give you an example. We represent Eaton Corp. They're a $23 billion company, and they have 99,000 employees. And don't be wowed by that. The point isn't that how incredible we are. It's the fact that there are processes that we need to go through, and it's a challenge. I'll put it very clearly. It's an oversimplification to think that you go from 23 feet 2 inches to 23 feet 3 inches, and it's a matter of just a signature. We actually have to generate drawings. We have to make that product, and again, it's a global assembly process. We have parts coming in from China. They have to participate in the drawings. So it's, if you order a custom chair with 3 legs and you decide for the 4th, about 3 weeks into the process, you're probably going to pay for that chair. And so that applies to light fixtures also. We do have, I would say about 25% of what Eaton manufactures is considered stock product. Again, it's a complex process.
Sure.
So I commission lighting control systems, and we have manufacturers in the room who want to pre-ship, pre-program lighting control system components, which means we can't wait any longer to decide what the sequence of operation is during the submittal process. So that is a huge wrench in all of this timeline stuff, in my opinion.
I had a conversation with an electrician in Chicago yesterday. It's 25,000 square feet. There's 2 closets filled with controllers for lighting control. I asked him, who's ever going to touch this? He said, no one. No one knows how it works.
I do. No, I'm just kidding. It may depend on the crossing us. Okay, guys, thank you. We're going to move on to the next topic, probably the most controversial, pricing. The question is, how much freedom do you have with respect to regulating markups and pricing?
0.
We have none. We put a price out in the marketplace, and it goes through a process, and there can be 2 or 3 other markups on top of it. So it's very little that we do once it leaves our door, ethically and legally.
You know, one of our favorite things we love hearing is, well, I could go to Home Depot and get it. Go to Home Depot and get it. Bring it there, get it up there when we need it, store it, and warranty it. And then clean it up for the same price you just said you could go to Home Depot for. A lot of times that extra value that just has to happen gets forgotten.
We have control to mark up whatever we want, but we would never get an order if we did that. I mean, we have to be competitive with, manufacturers reps put their prices out and they put it out to 5 of us, and we have to be the low bidder, just like a contractor has to be the low bidder to get a job.
And again, the risk is you're the bank. We're the bank, and we have to fix the problems.
So we as the architects certainly aren't the ones who are selling equipment, or lighting designers, we're not the ones selling the equipment, but I think in this mix, one of the places where we've particularly found value is that we are working with all of the folks here in the room to make sure that we can predict what that pricing is going to be through a transparent quoting process. That is before we layer on all those markups. And that gives us some control as we go through the process to be able to work with the client so they can understand how much something should cost. And if things are inflated, regardless of who does it, we have no interest in saying, oh God, look at Jack going crazy again. Or, we're not interested in pointing fingers. Although, yeah, just look at him. I mean, look suspect. But,
Well, I am. That's nature there.
but when we have some sense, we have quotes, and we know how much things are supposed to cost, that just keeps the process that much more streamlined. And going back to the question of who has the hammer, I think all of us wield a certain amount of power, but it's really maintaining the relationships not only with the people in this room, but with our manufacturers. There are times that we go to manufacturers, and sometimes it's through the reps, and sometimes it's directly to the manufacturers, and say, we really need this to be at this price point. And when we are respectful and we're collaborative, we see magical things happen with our manufacturers, and for that we're greatly appreciative. So I think it is both one where we have to exert some controls and use knowledge and make sure we're leveraging that, but we also have to use our relationships and respect those as well.
Depending on the contractor and the project type, we'll ask for unit pricing. Sometimes we get lump sum pricing back that includes lighting controls and a lighting package, and it's $1,017,000. I need it broken out? No. I must have it broken out? No. So I don't know if that's general contractor or electrical sub or supplier or who it is, but from the architectural side, I request it, but I can't see it.
This is a question which I don't have a lot of experience in, but why does pricing efforts seem to happen last minute? Is that valid? Mm-hmm. Okay, we got some yeses, so.
Value engineering. We thought it was going to come in here. Whether it's a tariff or it's the package isn't broken out, we can no longer afford it. So either re-engineer it, value engineer it, reselect, do something.
When it comes to value engineering, we have a lot of phrases in this industry. One is follow the money. Who's paying the bills and how much are they willing to pay? I could literally name a project today that's $500,000 over budget, and we got a new lighting design, not from anybody in here, but it's going to go up another $250,000. This owner's almost ready to pull the plug on the job because he can't afford what is being designed. So we talked a little bit about it. Unit prices are a wonderful thing. We request them on almost every job as well, so that everybody has the information and the group can make a logical decision together. Now, one of the things we do up front is we ask for, what can you sell me one of those for in 8 months? That's what the unit price needs to be. Not what I can buy 10,000 of them for now, a year ahead of when I might need the extra one. So realistic information that everybody understands, because I can tell you the first step with unit prices is, well, everybody goes through and adds it up to see if it matches the quote. Well, I can buy 10,000 of them a lot easier than I can buy one 10 months from now, air freight it here from China.
I think that's the exact point. We described a process that's highly competitive, where everybody's honest and fair and trying to win business, and that happens one time, and then they win the business. And then a lot of times people get frustrated when you add one 10 months later, and all of a sudden I'm like, why is this a $7,000 step plate? You know, why is this
You got fancy taste.
right? You know, so it's kind of the timing of it's not. I'm not frustrated with pricing until I'm halfway through construction and I have to change something and it makes me look bad. And if it was a great price, and it was a $150 light fixture that came in a week and a half, nobody would mind that I forgot it. I would never forget a light, but Lisa does all the time, and I'm just trying to cover for her.
We'll talk later.
So this is kind of, we have two questions here that are going to piggyback on that conversation. The first one is, how can the design community get fixture pricing which is consistent and fair? Or what, in your opinion, would help that scenario?
I'd love to answer that. Other than Carmen's $7,000 step light, I think it goes right back to that idea of ask for quotes from your reps and the manufacturers, get them early, make sure that they're project and quantity specific, and it's up to everybody to figure out how they want to do that. We have our own process that lots of folks in this room are aware of, but know how much things cost. I think there's no greater embarrassment, and we've all seen this happen on projects, than someone picks a fixture and thinks it's going to look great and finds out that that one fixture is $50,000. And sometimes you have a project that can afford that. Most of the time that's not the case. And I think that's a little bit of egg on our face. Our team works very hard to make sure that we know how much things cost, and so we believe that's one of our responsibilities. We request quotes on all our jobs.
That was easy. Okay, second piggyback question. What do you think are the perceived risks and benefits of having this greater transparency in pricing, such as adding unit pricing and fixture schedules that are on all construction documents?
I think the risk factor is low, but you know, again, I don't want to go into a redundancy of theme here, but you know, some of these things are, again, when we speak them in the room here, they're very complex things to do. The $7,000 step light, you know, shame on someone for that. But you know, when I was a kid, you know, they built B-52 bombers and they built, you know, thousands of them, and they needed a toilet seat, and it was $700. And you know, people, you know, it was always, well, the government wastes money. But it's difficult, again, when we're discussing NTOs, the nature of LEDs is giving us more flexibility, which again leads us into, I would say, more customization of what's showing up on the job. To make one is a bigger challenge than you would imagine. Now, is it, again, you should not have something go from 150 to 800, but to Steve's point, you know, I can promise you there are dynamic factors out there right now. We buy steel. We buy chips, we buy copper, and those are commodity traded. So you can have fluctuations. I couldn't guarantee you what something's going to cost 8 months from now. We have a pretty good idea. But again, my caution here is it's complex, and it can be very expensive for a company to make one light fixture.
And I think with the risk and the benefit is what phase is the project in? Are you in SD and you get pricing, and then it goes on the shelf for 6 months? Then you get DD pricing and you're surprised that the price went up. Or the project's 2 years out and you get pricing and you're not anticipating price fluctuation. That's just being blind.
I'm curious from our contracting community. I did some design build work with the VA hospital and developer-driven stuff a long time ago, and they have schedules of values for everything on the entire building. And one of their tricks was they'd make you take the 15 million and divide it up into a bunch of buckets. And if they thought you put too much money in one bucket, they'd delete them all out of the project and then ask for it back. And everybody, all the developers knew that was happening. So they were like, you know, it was strategic on where they were assigning values, but I'm curious if would you participate in a project where they asked you to provide a deep, a breakdown schedule of values with your bid, or would you just take a pass on it in the market today?
I would tell you it's gonna be for us, who are we dealing with? If this is somebody we have a long relationship with and we feel we're not at risk, I have absolutely no problem with it. If it's somebody that we're at risk, absolutely not. Because it will turn on us in a heartbeat and we're just left there. So a lot of it, to me, is relationship driven. There's certain contracts, yeah, absolutely, I have no problem with it. There's other people, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Because we're just talking about risk management here and through different lenses. Our risk as a credible designer and their risk as the installer and the financial risk on the project. So it'd be unfair for me to ask somebody else to take a big risk so that I have the chance to look better later on. And, just to be fair to the rest of the panelists.
What we are always trying to do is make sure that we're working to get our clients the best outcome at the best price. And I think if we answer that question in a different way, what's the benefit? We've been through multiple processes where, look, every job has VE. I mean, right? Don't we do VE on every job? When we have a team that sits in a room and no one's pointing fingers about how much it's over budget, but instead is saying, what about this option? What about that option? But all the vested players are in the room and coming up with a solution together and problem solving together. We achieve really incredible outcomes. And it's a very different kind of process than that VE that happens in a room where there's some package as it relates to lighting that just gets landed and the client is swayed by a $500,000 savings and the whole design team says, what just happened? So I think when we're looking at getting the best outcome for the client, the transparency through the whole process is one of the things that does the best job to ensure that.
I think one of the things is I can't think of hardly any job that I've ever quoted where somebody in the end didn't come back and say it was over budget. Every job's over budget. And I think there's a perception out there that you can always get money out of the lighting. There's always money in the lighting. Everybody, let's just get money out of the lighting. Or I'll have a competitor out there that's going to bid a non-specified package. It isn't what you guys want, but they'll throw a cheap number at it, and then everybody has to go back and try to get the people that specified the job to get to that price, and it's not realistic.
What motivates people to do that?
They're on the outside looking in, and they're trying to find some way to get the order. So they'll throw a stupid cheap price out there.
When we get those, you look at the package that you specified and look there.
And they'll save you $100,000.
And it's apples and bananas.
Yep.
We get told a lot of times, hey, we're an approved alternate. Well, in a lot of reality, they're not. They just would entertain that alternate, and it's not apples to apples. I know the perception is contractors love VE. I absolutely hate it. If I had a fixture schedule there that I could go from and that clock starts, that is the best case scenario for us. Because VE is taking nothing but time out of that contract, and that clock is ticking, and I'm on liquidated damages from the second I sign it. And it gets to be very hard for us to do when the whole design team is having to do everything again a second time because something has changed. And I have a lot of sympathy for them. They're already done. This is what we're doing. This is what we figured out. And then we change one thing to save $100,000, but it costs them all this additional time and support to do it, and it's cost me nothing but time to even make it happen.
And generally with VE, no one gets extra fee.
That's true.
What are some successful ways to make the budgeting process more smooth?
I think to Lisa's point, if transparency is in the process, it smooths everything out. And, we do try to be cognizant of what you have put into a job, your time, your efforts. We have very, very intelligent owners, and they're activist owners, and that's been one of the biggest changes. But if we want to be successful, You know, everyone can apply pressure in this room. And someone said to me earlier today, well, you know, Jack, you're sitting on this panel and you actually, everyone in your room is your customer. That's not true of everyone in the room except the lighting rep. But if we are transparent, we can work with our contractor friends, architects, engineers, and we can make sure that we deliver what the owner bought. And that would be the true success story. And it is a challenge. I hear Steve, and I call some people in this room where it's not advantageous to just destroy these and tear them up. But again, I think that someone mentioned it earlier, what does the owner really want to pay? That feels like a disconnect to me that doesn't occur at my level. It's, you know, at the contractor level. And, you know, my comment is directed towards the design community. I don't know how the disconnect happens, that no one seems to know what a budget is. I compare it to the airline industry. If you're going to fly from Denver to Atlanta, Georgia, and you have 237 seats and it costs you $20,000, divide it up and put some profit on it. Again, it doesn't work that way, but things arrive at us and there is shock. Oh, well, we had no idea. So, as Lisa mentioned, try to get some control over your costing up front and have transparency, and I think we'll all be more successful. Because most of us in here, what we really sell is time. And you know, when we're cutting into that critical factor, it makes us all less profitable. Is that too long? Was that 93 seconds?
You're good. Anything else on that? Sweet, next topic. You guys ready? You guys? Reading this as if somebody else were asking it. We're often told that projects need to be sourced from one rep agency, but it limits availability and the breadth of the product. Do you have any success stories of projects with multi-agency orders?
I did a project, it's kind of unfair to put it out, it was a $140 million project, so there was enough to go around, but we had 3 agencies, each of them provided, somebody did all the exterior lighting, somebody did all the healthcare lighting, and somebody else did a lot of the specialty lighting on the project. And why did that happen? Because we had 3 different design specialists that were cued in on some specific products, and there was enough of it to go around, and it worked out. You know, our office has a lot of different product in it, but that's probably not a good example. From my standpoint, as a designer, I don't want to have 300 fixture types from everybody in town on the project. There are times where there's just something special that somebody out there does, highly decorative piece, but I don't know. I mean, do you think you want to have a kit of parts from 4 or 5 different people? Yeah.
I think every rep who works with us in this room could stand up and answer this question for me. We have a very agnostic approach. Our philosophy is the best product at the best price for the project. And so every one of the reps in here, and you're welcome to roll your eyes, we very rarely do a single agency spec, largely because we're looking for what's going to be the best fit, and we have a lot of very specific and finessed architectural things that we're trying to achieve with the lighting. So that's definitely swimming upstream, and that's been part of what Davis has done when we've brought lighting on board, is attempting to make sure that we are doing something that is a little bit different in the marketplace. And I think it takes the cooperation and understanding of all the people involved in the process. And it's doing things a little bit differently. So we're not just calling one rep, but we've got multiple names on every project, and we often list alternates. We are successful doing that because we do budgeting and because we enlist the contractors in that conversation from early on, contractors and clients. If we don't have their buy-in, of course, we're not going to ramrod this approach, but most of the time when we walk through the reasoning behind it, people understand why we're doing it that way. And I'm actually curious to hear from Steve and from Darwin about the perceived complexities for you when there are multiple agencies involved. Sorry, Chris, I'm pivoting on this one, but I'm very curious.
You heard me reference it earlier about being held hostage on a fixture. In a situation like that, I rely heavily on the distributor. And we work with a few distributors, and we have a heavy relationship with them because they are there for their purchasing power. They are there to help through these situations and so forth. And, you know, they have the relationships and so forth on that level to get that one-off thing that nobody wants to respond to you because they're upset about something. I'm sorry, I didn't make that decision. I'm just trying to deliver this product for this person that somebody else wanted. So the distributor to us is a very big piece of that puzzle. And our relationship with our distributors is such that we buy the fixtures from them. They need to manage some of that for us, and Gexpro does a great job for us in that regard.
We have a lot of success with multiple rep fixture orders. We had to hire on a lot of extra people to do submittal process because we'll put submittals together ourselves, and there's a little bit more risk for us, but I would say 50% of the projects we do are multiple rep packages.
Darwin, when you assess your markups on a job, if it's, let's say it's all coming from ISI versus something that has 4 different reps, does that change the way that you look at your markups or your profit on the job?
Not really. I mean, we have to be competitive still at the end of the day. And I compete with 5 other people, so I have to be low. We don't really change our markup based on it.
All right, guys, we're gonna move to the next question. Lighting equipment seems to have many layers in procurement. Do you expect it will be the same, or do you expect any changes in 5 to 10 years?
I don't.
I don't anticipate any. I mean, it's, you know, trying to digest that question for a minute. Our process is the same as everyone else's. As far as extra layers, there's a rep that sells Darwin, you know, connectors. There's a rep that sells Darwin lamps if they still exist. So we're part of that process, and it's, you know, contractor, distributor, rep process on our side. I think I kind of understand the question a little. It is a little more of a challenge with the lighting packages, again, because of submission and you know, versus the boilerplate aspect that is built in. You were commenting earlier about controls. You know, it's a challenge. Part of that challenge in the layers that are there are because we are all competitive, and our dimming system and your dimming system probably couldn't be anything further alike, except in their actual function that they bring to the project. So again, I think we're kind of answering the same question we did earlier about, you know, why do we have to have a resubmittal on a submittal? You know, I don't see that changing either. I think it's just a part of the process, and you know, I will just make one comment overall. The market drives what Darwin does. The market drives what I do and how we go to market. And we're a value proposition for the 149 companies we represent. Darwin's a value proposition for the manufacturers that we have for many reasons. They stage and store, as Steve said. They actually replicate the submission process, and they pay us. They pay our manufacturers. So I don't see or anticipate anything, but I'm just going to say one last thing that our poor guys have to listen to. My latest cliche of the week is, you know, this isn't new, but creative destruction is what drives this market. And you can no more anticipate 10 years from now, and you have no idea who will be in this process 10 years from now. And I'm going to go a little over, but I can go back, unfortunately, 39 years, and the concept of design build, design assist, that did not exist. Half of the jobs we see now fall into that category. There's not lighting designers on those jobs. There's sometimes the electrical engineers, simply a pass-through. We couldn't have anticipated LED. I mean, there were people writing white papers 10 years ago and pulling their hair out saying, oh, you know, we're all going down the wrong righteous path here. So difficult question to answer, but something to consider definitely. Did I get all of that?
You did. Since you prefaced it, I let it slide.
Thank you. That's the secret.
Actually, I'll share an alternative point of view, not because I have any certainty of this, but just because the world is, yeah, the world is unpredictable. I recently read an article in Forbes about the freight industry, very long-standing, very established way of managing huge components of business in our country. There is now a very disruptive company that has started up and is massively successful that is effectively Uber for freight. They are so successful that now they have 2 competitors that are following the same model. And so I think one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, as much as we work in this process and are finessing it, is there a world in which lighting is as a stronghold in construction, that we've been doing things very much in the same way, and a many-layered process is going to be subject to that same sort of innovation and disruption, whether it's driven by end users, it's driven by clients, it's driven by manufacturers who want a more streamlined path to market. I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but I think that if we are all saying that we think it's going to be exactly the same in 10 years, we may find that we are proven wrong.
And I did not.
It's risk management on each layer. I mean, Darwin's here because he takes on risk for the project and he gets compensated for that. So is somebody else willing to take on additional risks to streamline the process? And do they see an opportunity to do that? Or did some of the layers disappear? You know, could, in a completely automated manufacturing environment, could I build a fixture myself as the designer and have it, you know, drone shipped to a job site and delivered and nobody else exists but me and the end user? Maybe, I don't know. But I mean, we're dreaming, but it's either risks or layers in the process that are either going to move or be removed that are going to change that. I don't know the answer, but that's how it changes.
I totally agree. I don't see in the near future an Amazon for lighting. There's too much risk. And Amazon's not going to take on the risk, so then the contractor's going to have to take on the risk. And I don't think they want that either.
No.
I would make one more comment about that, if I may.
And so, I was saying.
I think I have 6 seconds left. You know, the risk mitigation is obviously a huge factor. If you're willing, as an industry, you know, contractors, manufacturers, designers, architects, engineers, to forego uniqueness, to go for vision, to forego design effort, you can get light fixtures tomorrow, as Steve said, literally. We have millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in stock that is sold in the United States every year just from Eaton. The risk part of that is, again, I'm going back to push that again. If you want to accept something other than this room, or there's multiples in here, so I mean, those could be a standard product also. So that's really the question going forward: is what do we want our industry to look like? What do you want your collaborative efforts to look like? And if you really want to make this easy, just commoditize it, and it will all be gone. So the future, right?
You know, the other thing I'd say is embrace change. You know, I liken it to Kodak when digital cameras first came out. They resisted it, wasn't going to do it. Now they're fairly obsolete. LEDs, they're so standard now, you don't hardly see fluorescence anymore. So you have to look for and embrace those changes, and you have to be willing to adapt to them, even if you don't want to, because it's coming, and you're not going to stop it.
Great. Can you hold it?
Can I just add one little thing?
What do you think, audience? Go ahead.
Should tape light be emergency lighting? Because I've seen it.
That's an interesting question. If it meets UL standards, then it would be on the same playing field as everything else.
And what's inside of linears?
LEDs on a
Tape light with an extrusion around it, a nicer version of tape light. I mean, printed circuit board, mounted LEDs.
No.
It's hard to answer your question. I am certain there are products out there that as the person signing the drawings, I would not feel comfortable using in that application. But I'm also certain that there are products out there that I think are probably just as reliable, produce a safer exiting environment than a couple self-contained emergency lighting units that nobody tests by the door. And if they comply with all
UL and NFPA and everybody else. I don't know that I would, I mean, I saw this, I was walking around the mall with my family, and there was a lighting track with a receptacle mounted at the track, and then a self-contained emergency lighting unit that was cord and plug connected to that receptacle. I took a picture, because why wouldn't I? And I sent it to everybody. I said, is this code compliant? This is a public setting. It's a mall, concourse in a mall. And, you know, dig around in NEC, and I'm not going to tell the answer now, but there is a wide variety of installations that all of us might think are a really bad idea that are acceptable. And nobody wants to design to those applications, but they exist, and those, the cheaper and worse it is, probably the more of them that there are.
That's what I was supposed to ask you.
Yeah. I don't have a microphone, so good time.
You're good. I can have that. What would you like to see change or improve in the next 5 to 10 years?
We talked about different delivery methods, you know, design build, design assist, transparency of budgets, access to the owners. What do they want to pay for this? What does the owner value? I'm sorry, what does the owner value? If I can explain to them what is so great about this light that somebody else couldn't do it quite the same, and it's worth the extra $100. I want some consideration in the overall design and construction process to facilitate those things happening meaningfully throughout the process. I think we can do a lot with that, and again, that's just process driven from us. It's not some magical thing that's in R&D somewhere that is going to come out and change the world.
From my perspective, some help understanding what's coming down the road from agencies like IECC. Is it more outlets, less outlets, more energy conservation? Because that's going to drive the market on products. We have the luxury right now of working for clients like Google that are saying, we're going to build a building in 3 years, the TI is going to take a 4th year. What's cool and innovative in 5 years? I have no idea. But that's what they pay us for, so it's difficult to predict what that change in technology would be.
I would say that I would put that into 2 buckets. The first one is process, and in discussing changes that we would love to see in the process, some of those are things that we're already working on with many of our collaborators in the room, which is continuing the process of transparency around lighting costs and lighting delivery and the ongoing communications. We've had a lot of wonderful collaborations with people in this room with I would say, magical outcomes that sort of make our clients think that we have a magic wand, and that's definitely not the case. We just value relationships and we try to communicate. The other request on the process side, what we would love to see change is the VE packages that are just submitted as sort of a normal course of practice when it's not necessarily established that there's a budget issue. They're just handed over without the design team being part of that. We would love for that to cease so that that is arrived at collaboratively with the client and with the design team in the room. In terms of outcomes, what I personally would love to see increase in the next 5 to 10 years is an understanding of the way that lighting influences health and wellness, and having that be part of the conversation, much like when 10 years ago, oh my God, 20 years ago in Texas, when I was practicing in the world of architecture and design and talked about sustainability, people looked at me like I had 3 heads. And now it's sort of gauche if you don't talk about it. So if lighting and wellness become more entwined, and that becomes a greater part of our conversation, that's something that personally I'm very passionate about seeing become part of what we do and the value that we provide as lighting designers.
You guys don't want to see any change over there?
No,
You're good?
we like things this way. After 39 years, there's not much more change. That's right.
Revise and resubmit.
Anything else on that question? Audience, now it's your turn.
All right, I have a, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Chris, do you want to be a microphone moderator?
I think everybody can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, I'll try to speak loud. All right, so because all of you are sort of in the procurement process or design process, along the entire spectrum in some facet, if I were an owner and I said, all right, I need to get 25% out of the budget, how do you each react, like on a specific level?
25% of the electrical budget, we'll call it? Or 20% of the lighting budget, or 20% of the construction budget?
Sorry, that's the lighting budget, thank you.
Okay.
The lighting budget, yeah.
How would I react to 25% of the lighting budget? Well, I'd walk you through the plans, what we did, why we did it, and talk about where you're willing to make compromises. And I'd talk to, probably not Darwin, I know he gives the best price possible, so there's nothing left there. But maybe Steve can talk to me about schedule and, can we squeeze it? Is there anything out of that to be had? And just make sure that, peel back through the design one last time. Did we accidentally, I'm talking about Lisa's project again, accidentally put a $7,000 step light in where we didn't need one? So I really hate to see the Type A fixture go from $120 to $115, but we got 250 of them. So we save easy money right there. I'd rather go back through and challenge the design at every step of the way and say, did we keep the owner's best interest in mind the whole way through the project? Will they value their money that we're spending today?
And somebody had said it earlier, where there's this misconception that there's 25% markup on fixtures in a project, and I don't believe that's the case. At least I know it's not on our side of it. But if you got a question like that, they hit on it. Okay, Mr. Owner, what 25% of the project do you want to go away? Well, I don't want anything to go away. Matter of fact, I want better things. It's not going to happen. What are you willing to get rid of? Well, I just want it cheaper.
And I think
There's a lot of things I want, but it just ain't going to happen.
before we started getting rid of things, I think it would be looking at the number. It's $6 million. Okay, you want $23 million or 2.3 out of that. Where is it? Is it controls? Is it site lighting? Is it interior lighting? Is it code lighting? Switches, we have fancy switches. Okay, we can do without the fancy switches. We can't do without the lighting controls. It's not code compliant. So you have to drill down and see where it is. And if you can explain it to the owner, I cannot do without lighting controls. That's a must-have. It's not the lighting package. It's controls that weren't identified in a previous bid or something, because they're the devil's in the details at the end of the day.
And it's really hard to look at a project budget on a line item basis, and I don't think that's fair to the process. So do you look at the overall construction budget of the project and say, we need to save $2 million, where's the best place to save it? Can we get smarter in some of did we build this finicky cove that's going to be putting a bunch of money into the chipboard and painter's budget when we could have got a pretty decent light fixture that accomplished the same goal? And do we actually make the lighting budget go up, but take the overall construction budget down because there's hundreds and hundreds of feet of that? From my standpoint, it feels really frustrating sometimes when you feel like all the money gets assigned to either subs or scope items, and to move it around becomes really, really difficult. But sometimes that's where the opportunities are.
We have seen some really interesting things happen. Obviously, 25% is a big difference in budget that requires more than there's some diligence to change numbers that much. But we do start by looking at unit prices, and sometimes we find that there's a disalignment with what we've been quoted versus what has come through channels. And at times, people are human. We've seen that there are just mistakes on quotes that happen, and sometimes project pricing can get much better in line when we ask our rep friends, our distributors, hey, was that the right unit price? That doesn't seem like it's correct. The other thing is going back to our manufacturers. If we're working with trusted manufacturers and they've put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears with us on a project, and it's all of our A-type fixtures, and they've got time and money in it, maybe they're willing to sharpen their pencils because they'd rather keep the spec on the job than lose it entirely. And so we start to look at things that way, and of course there's always the, well, can we substitute a fixture type with something that will perform at a slightly lower price? So we find that we're taking whacks at that from a lot of levels, but we always enjoin caution before people create a sense of emergency. Let's actually vet the numbers to make sure that someone didn't have a human error day. We have seen that happen, and sometimes it happens with with outdated specs. We had a project where an engineer was using a canned spec from years ago, and that product, which was a simple linear, which should have been $75 a linear foot, was clocking in at $400 because it had become a custom. Mind you, this was not our spec. It wasn't Carmen's spec. It was nobody in this room. But that single change, which everybody pointed at me and said, oh, lighting designer, you're so fancy. You've got a VE your lighting package. When we went and looked at unit pricing, we changed from that one custom spec to something that was perfectly sufficient, and we were all the way back in budget. So you've got to know where those numbers are getting inflated. Sometimes it's a simple solution and we make it complex.
Any other responses? Any other questions? I believe.
First of all, thank you all for coming. It's been a very informative session so far. So I have a question where it's kind of twofold. So the first part would be, I love the idea of everyone coming together and designing and making sure everyone's on the same page, the decisions are made, and we have a smooth project towards the end. Ideal case scenario, right? Sometimes, not very often, mistakes do happen, as she said.
But not from us and not from
Sure.
Carmen.
Not
Nobody
from
up
anyone in
here.
this room. Yes, absolutely, perfect. So my question is, how often do you see that teamwork come in at the back end when there is a mistake happening, and how often do people actually come together to try to solve it instead of playing the blame game? It's like, oh, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. And built off of that, do you believe if it happened more often, that is, the teamwork happened more often, would it cause a ripple effect to create a more smooth process in design, because people would be less worried about the liability and the repercussions that they're going to bring on themselves, which would directly or indirectly impact submittal processes, because it's like the last stage of, catching a mistake if it happens.
Well, the factor of who we deal with is very important. And, I would comment on that initially by saying it's rare that you get to the end of a job where people really don't, people actually try to work things out. It's not important to know whose mistake it is, but, our experience generally is, hey, can you do your part? We're going to do our part. And we do try to come up with solutions. We can't make mistakes go completely away all the time, but, honestly, most of the contractors we work with, distributors, that's our goal, is to, okay, we all have a customer here, someone made a mistake, no one needs to take advantage of that, and I think that happens, that's the norm more than the exception. To your second point, though, if we're part of the team and we rely on, Ted, Carmen, Lisa for future business, we're even more motivated to make sure something like that happens. So,
I mean, for me, a lot of it is relationship. If you have a situation out there, and you're really at that point of desperation, who do you call, and do they respond to you, and do they answer you, and do they help you? That's the people I choose to work with. Because you heard me mention it numerous times. Risk mitigation is what I do. I try to reduce the amount of exposure we have to make this job work right and go right. And if I need to call somebody, who do I call? And will they respond, and will they help me? Or is it, yeah, there ain't much I can do? Well, that's the kind of person that I choose to not deal with the next time. Because I'm looking for a teammate.
I think to that point, my experience in the last 5-10 years is, thank you.
The people that are making that accusation of, I want someone's ass, is either the owner or the owner's rep. It's not the people in this room. So generally, I'm gonna watch his back, he's gonna watch my back. Ultimately, he's under my insurance because I'm the first one they're gonna go after. Well, there's no owners reps in the room. They have a different motivation.
I mean, we're kind of off the question, but yeah, creating the environment where the owner thinks that they're going to win by making the electrical contractor, the distributor, or the GC, or somebody lose. Just the basic premise of a low bid job is that someone's going to get a deal. And the idea that I'm going to call somebody up and say, you need to make my problem go completely away is, you can only do that every so often. Like that can't be how you go to business with people. Generally, most of the time, we all have to watch each other's back, do what we can. If something gets missed, what can we do? But there are folks that aren't in that circle of trust, like you said, that don't care about that continued relationship or are expecting us to be the enemy of the contractor or be the guardian of the owner. And we have a responsibility, but that's not what our contractual obligation is.
And starting a meeting with those folks that aren't in this room, the flamethrower, doesn't end well.
Unless it's not labeled as a flamethrower, so you can
Or it's a
ship it.
Tesla friend.
Yeah, exactly. I did have one question.
Yeah.
We got one more time for one more question. If you guys can make it quick, we'll get 2 in. When do you guys
Mine's
go?
going to be directed towards contractor and rep. Are there any opportunities in the industry to work with maybe even as a lunch presentation to the design community, not only what products can we use, are there things that we could specify and or put into our designs that simplify the time factor on the contractor side to make much greater savings than they would ever see on the product side? Because I think that right now we're spending a lot more on time and labor than we are necessarily on components. Are there better ways that we can specify things or draw them up to make it easier and save some time out in the field?
You know, Mike, that's a great point because the invisible cost is labor. And we don't install fixtures. Conceptually, we don't know how much something costs. I can say that cost $100, but that might not be the reality of it. And that collaboration, to overuse the word, is very critical because, we put a lot of burden, on the contractor. All of us do. The expectation at some point, that's where the rubber meets the road, is the contractor. And you specify products that you can't anticipate are going to cost 10 times more to install than something that maybe even looks exactly like the product that you want. We actually, unfortunately, represent at least, out of the 149, at least 120 of them make those kind of products. And thank all of you for participating in that little that little misery. But I think that's a good point, and that's something that we wouldn't be opposed to. And I think going forward, that might be a critical aspect of how we talk about fixtures with the design team, and then they can express that to the owner. Yeah, I know you want the Italian fixture, but Italians don't really care how much anything costs to install. Americans do. So that was not fair to all my Italian friends in the audience. So I'm trying to be nice. I just Lisa and Carmen have been getting along so well. I didn't want to just be very tread lightly. So. Steve,
Many times by the time we get engaged on a project, it's pretty well down the road. And to make a situation like Jack's brought up work, we need to be brought in earlier, at ground level. What that owner wants and what the designers are designing, what I'm really looking for is how does it go in? And how fast can I get it? And how does it work? The number one warranty call we have, and I'm sure the other contractors in the room are going to back me up, is the lighting control. Because it's usually over-designed. And the number one thing they want to know is where's the switch?
well, the janitor always knows. That's why you're getting the call.
Right. Or you got a daylight harvesting, that fixture's not on, and they come out as a warranty call because that fixture isn't working. Well, it's not supposed to.
All right, guys, so I'm gonna let Aaron have the last question. We'll try to do it fast.
So you guys mentioned that the goal is to provide a product that's
best quality and best price. One thing I feel like gets left behind is taking into account the manufacturer's warranty. So you kind of brought that up there. When you're specifying a fixture package, do you guys take into account the quality of that manufacturer, the quality of a full warranty, or besides limited warranty, and covering labor when their product fails in the field and there's a lot of labor costs that are associated to getting that fixed? I've noticed there's a lot of manufacturers out there that completely kibosh any type of labor coverage when their product fails.
Well, they usually want to give you $15 because that's what it could take them on a factory floor to do it. Again, that goes back to the relationship. If I got a problem, what are they going to do to help me with the problem? Or is it all on me? Because if it's all on me, I'm going to find somebody that I do have a stronger relationship with. Because you're right, labor kills you on a warranty. You know, and we try to have the relationship with the distributors and the reps. Get us a few extra pieces of something, and it makes it go way down. But if I got to send a service driver out to pull out a driver, to go order a new driver, to come back and reverse that process to put in the new driver, it's incredibly expensive. And Mr. Owner, who just paid all this money for this fancy building, is upset because his showpiece fixture isn't working. So we try to find those things. What can we do to mitigate those costs? Because drivers are going to go out. I'm sorry, it's going to happen. Electronics are going to fail. You got to mitigate that. What can we do to drive it down? And I can tell you, I look for the reps and the distributors to go to the factory, and sometimes they got to shake the tree a little bit because labor will kill you. And if you see a trend, say you got a fixture type and they're starting to fail, and they're starting to fail on a consistent basis, that's a bigger problem. That's where we like to bring in the designers and the architects, because we didn't pick the fixture. What would you like us to do? It's not working as told or designed.
Example, I have a story just from today, actually. Brenda and Ryan know what I'm talking about. We had a phone call from a client on a project that was recently completed where we had some beautiful decorative pendants from an overseas manufacturer highlighting the lobby. And one of those globes was cracked during shipping, and the client was very frustrated because through the warranty process they were being told by the electrical contractor that 15 more globes needed to be ordered to replace the one under warranty. And we just laughed. That's just totally wrong. So we called somebody who was in this room. I think he stepped away, and also the manufacturer, and said, this seems ridiculous. I'm sure there's been a miscommunication somewhere. And it was resolved within 5 minutes via email, and the process was underway. So I think some of that is that there's a lot of possibility of miscommunication. Warranty should absolutely be a consideration, and we should not be comparing 1-year warranties versus 5 years. Educating our clients about that is really critical. I think the other half of it is that sometimes information is conflated, and so where the people here have relationships, sometimes we can cut through that static very rapidly by making sure that we're just cutting out. Sometimes the middlemen have incorrect information or misunderstand things, and so we that have those relationships can help simplify that process.
Last answer, anybody else?
Last answer, warranties aren't free. You talked about, do you specify a 10-year warranty that covers everything? Yeah, I'd love to, but that all costs money at some point in the process. So if you're working for a developer that wants to build the building and sell it in 3 years, they don't want to pay for a 7-year warranty because they'll be so far gone, they don't care anymore. Do you design around a company that their business plan is to hit an emerging part of the market, get bought by Eaton in the next 18 months? They'll write a 20-year warranty because they'll be long gone. I mean, you just got to think about, what you're doing. It's ending on a positive note, I think.
You are ending on a positive note because yes, when you're dealing with some companies, and thank you for recognizing the fact Eaton offers 5-10-year warranties, and again, not anticipating that they'll still be here 10 years, but pretty good chance. So I don't know that that's always understood by everyone in the process. We have guys that offer a 1-year warranty, but there's a valuation of a company, and when they're offering warranties and they don't have any warrants against that exposure, then when they disappear, we've fixed many a job out of our pocket. And some of those companies are still in business. So I think it'd be nice if we could have frank conversations about that with you guys without it scaring you off to what it might mean. I mean, if I tell you, hey, they're a smaller company, the valuation's not large, there's not any particular warrant here, so you might want to understand what the 15-year warranty actually means.
Well, everybody, please help me in thanking our panelists. That was one of the best panels I've ever been a part of. That's great. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Just real quick, everybody.